Crystal Wade here with Let's Wade In. So glad you could join us today. This is the final part on the gift of leadership. And with so many things with the Father, what we think from how we see things on the earth is backwards to how the Father does things from heaven. Now, the first thing we usually think on the earth when we're thinking about the gift of leadership is director or commander, when actually that's the last one. The first one, from the Father's viewpoint, is serving. It's serving and encouraging and inspiring and waiting, and then it's directing or leading or commanding. Now we see this in the life of Nehemiah. Nehemiah had been exiled from his home. He was a refugee or an exile in another nation. He was actually living in Babylon, and he was chosen to be cupbearer to the king. And what this meant is he had to taste the king's drink. Every drink that the king would have, he would have to test it first. The reason he did that is because the way that intrigue worked at the time was if you wanted to kill a leader, you would poison their drink. That was the favorite way to kill a leader. And so every day Nehemiah tasted that drink, and the king would be like, well, if Nehemiah dies, then I won't drink it. If he doesn't die, I will drink it, and everything's fine. So it's all fine for the king. But Nehemiah every day is facing death. Every day. He grew in strength and in courage of trusting God every day by facing death. One day, his brothers, his actual physical brothers, had come into town from Jerusalem, and he got the news. Because, news came by camel for a long time. It didn't come on the internet, and it took a long time to get there. So it was very exciting to hear news from your homeland. His brothers said, Nehemiah, we're in bad shape. They said the walls are broken down. We are around our city. We are in disgrace. People are just overrunning the city. There's shame on us. It is not going well at all. And Nehemiah was just really downhearted by hearing that report. And so he prayed and he fasted and just like, God, we've got to do something. You've got to do something. Something has to be done. This has to change. And so he was, staying in that place of praying and fasting for a while. He came before the king one day, and his face wasn't his usual joyful self. And the king, who really is just using Nehemiah, like you die, so I don't die. So he's just kind of using Nehemiah. Well, that day he looks at him and he's like, Nehemiah, what's wrong? He actually has concern for him. And Nehemiah says, well, King, I can't really be joyful when my city is broken down and there is shame upon my people. And the king went from concern about Nehemiah to a lot of concern. He said, what do you want me to do for you? And Nehemiah said, I want to go and I want to repair Jerusalem. And the king goes, well, okay. He said, well, what do you need and how long will you be gone? This is unheard of. That the king would say, all right, I release you to go and do something good for your people, and I'll go without your services and face death or get somebody I don't know yet into your place. It was unbelievable. But because Nehemiah had grown every day, facing death, every day trusting God, being prepared in that place, he was ready to ask when the time came. God gave him favor. So Nehemiah got everything he wanted. He got money from the king. He got protection from the king. He got time off. He went to Jerusalem, and then he kept his mouth shut with what he wanted to do. And at night, when everybody was asleep, he secretly went around town and he's looking at the wall, he's looking at the situation, and he's getting it in his head in the first person, what's going on here and what needs to be done. And so the next day, the people that are in town are talking to him, the elders and the leaders that were there, and they're like, well, Nehemiah, why are you here? And then Nehemiah begins telling them his plan. He's like, we need to rebuild this wall. And they're like, yeah, we do. But they were kind of downhearted because nothing was really working out for them at that point. They were being overrun by enemies, really, enemy neighbors. And they didn't really have a leader or a plan. Well, Nehemiah had been prepared, and he steps in. They're like, okay, to his plan, and then he begins to direct them. So in the leadership gift, what you think would be first, directing and commanding, is actually last. And it comes in on a person that has been prepared and has waited and prepared the plan. Well, get this about Nehemiah. So he gets them started. He gets them all organized into their teams. They're all there building the wall. And then those enemy guys are trying to intimidate them. It's like, you silly Israelites, you won't get, you can't do anything with this flimsy wall. And they're just intimidating them and trying to tear them down. And then they would up that when that didn't work. And they would try this plot and try that plot. Well, so what Nehemiah did was he changed his plan too. And what he had the people do, he said, now let me tell you what, we are going to finish this wall. And we will work during the day and we will have guards at night. And that's what we're going to do. And he got them into their groups with their work teams, with their guards, and he was out there with them. He didn't ask them to do something he was not willing to do. And guess what? They all listened to him. And they followed his directions. They followed his plan. And in 52 days, that wall was rebuilt. They didn't have these caterpillar tractors. They didn't have earth-moving machines. All they had was stones and their hands and a few people. And they finished that project in 52 days, which is less than 2 months. It was a supernatural job. God backed Nehemiah's direction as Nehemiah had trusted God and been prepared. Okay? So the last part of the leadership gift is directing, and that is after you've been prepared, kept your mouth shut, got the plan straight, and God brings together all that you need to make that happen. And then guess what? It happens supernaturally better and faster than you can ask, think, or imagine. And that is what God is preparing you to do. You can read this story for yourself. It's in the book of Nehemiah. So remember, go with God, go for the gold.